Great, so thank you and welcome everyone to this final live session of the Sanitation Workers Forum. And we can safely say it's been a really interesting, insightful 4 days of talks and discussions, as well as personal experiences being shared across the 4 days. So a huge thank you to everyone who joined us for that. And I'll just bring up the slides, Maisie. Maisie, would you like to present them or shall I present the slides?
I'm happy to if
Sure.
you need a break, Sally, from you've been doing a lot of chairing.
No, absolutely. So all I'd like to say is, again, what we're going to do in this session is very much just a brief presentation in terms of some key takeaways and some thanks, and really to get your feedback on what to do going forward. And I just wanted to sort of reflect on a comment from Peter on the Hover platform, who said, as the sessions come to an end, and what is the takeaway? Or will this Sanitation Workers Forum turn into just another talking shop where intellectuals come to make noise and go back to their comfort zones? What are the action points? Shall we do advocacy that's backed up with resources? So that's just one provocation in terms of what will we do going forward in terms of taking this momentum on sanitation workers forward and not stepping in front of or blocking existing movements and initiatives that are happening. So just as a provocation to get us thinking, but before we go into more detail, I'd like to pass over to Maisie. Thank you.
Thank you, Sally. Are you able to share them from your screen, if possible? Fantastic. I will go through these very quickly because I think we want as much time as possible for discussion, but I thought it was useful just to recap on some of the objectives that we had at the start of the week, recap on some of the key themes that have come out to kind of prompt us discussing some of our feedback and next steps. So next slide, please, Sally. So firstly, just to say on behalf of all of the committee, a huge thank you to everybody who has participated this week. In particular, our speakers, over 60 speakers, which I think is just phenomenal to have had such a wide-ranging opportunity to hear from so many different experts, those with lived experience, those with challenges to how things are being done, those with research and showing progress in different areas, and those just facilitating different discussions and prompting us to open up into new ways of thinking. So a huge thank you to them. A huge thank you to the support from the Initiative for Sanitation Workers and the partnering organisations ILO, WHO, WaterAid, World Bank and SNV for supporting us and providing resources to make sure that we were able to put on this fantastic forum this week. A huge thank you, they're not joining us today, but to our interpreters, so to Philip, Placide and Kwame, and an additional note that unfortunately, due to insecurity in Burkina Faso, Philip, Placide and Kwame were very willing to come on board quite late to this as a result of our booked interpreters not being available. So a huge thank you to them. And of course, to everybody that's participated, both through the formal sessions, on the Hover platform, on social media, on sharing updates with colleagues and others who would be interested. And I, for one, feel so grateful and privileged to have had the opportunity to meet, discuss and learn from so many people this week. So just to bring us back, I think our minds have probably all gone in so many different directions when we've been listening and learning in all of the myriad of sessions that we've had. But just to bring us back and recap what the initial objectives were of this forum and what we set out to achieve. So firstly, we were trying to share knowledge and good practices about sanitation work and workers globally. Secondly, to build and support a community of practice around the topic, including sanitation workers' representatives, activists, policymakers, practitioners, students, and academics. And thirdly, the objective was to discuss and prioritise future areas of research, policy, and practice. So I won't discuss these now, but perhaps when we share our reflections in a few moments, it would be good to also anchor that as to how much we feel we've achieved those objectives or what we need to continue as next steps to realise them. And again, I won't go through this full list, but I thought useful as a prompt for our discussion, just to pull out some of the key themes and issues that have come up either in individual sessions that we've had, come up in some of the message and discussion boards, or maybe being cross-cutting across them all. So perhaps just to prompt our thinking on a few of them, I think boldly from the start, and Beswada Wilson's keynote on our opening day, it was very clear that representation, who speaks for who, the role of international organisations and how they can help and hinder some of the activism and progress that's being made by local groups and sanitation workers themselves. I think there were some fascinating discussions on the historical roots and the influences of colonialism and post-colonial times, and how we need to really acknowledge and discuss where some of these current day issues have come from in order to address them coherently. Something that I was just sharing in our previous session as well that really hit home with me was kind of this tension between the contextual and necessity to be very localized in our discussions, whilst also acknowledging and realizing the opportunity for learning across contexts, geographies, and sectors, and how do we do that in a global forum. It's a fantastic opportunity to kind of go across so many different issues and geographies, and how do we balance that with the need for acknowledging that all of these issues are very different depending on where you're sitting and what groups are being represented within that. And then just to pick out finally, I thought yesterday it was very clearly acknowledged some of the gaps and the necessity of building a research agenda around this. And I think Alex and Jen were laughing in the last session about how the to-do list just seemed to keep growing longer and longer for everybody throughout this, as we realise that progress is being made, but there's so much more to be done in order to confront some of the challenges that we've been discussing. So I'll leave it there. I just wanted to, I guess, prompt our thinking as we go into an open discussion now for people to share some of the reflections they've had, whether those themes resonate with you or there were others at the forefront of your mind, and also to reflect on where we go now. How do we take this forward, and how can we take some of the learnings immediately into place as we continue as a community working on this. So should I just open up and see if anybody would like to share some of their reflections? And we're a small group, so feel free just to come in directly.
Yeah, thank you, Maisie, and thank you for that presentation. I agree with you. I think it's important to reiterate that we're very thankful to all the participants, speakers, interpreters. I did appreciate a lot that we could have many of our sessions translated in French as a native French speakers, it's always nice to see those sessions and to enable also West Africans to participate in an easier setting than constantly having everything in English and them trying to join, because it's often the case. So yeah, I'm glad we could have this, and thank you for supporters to providing the budget for it. One thing that I'm leaving this forum with, and I think it just highlighted again the complexity of working with, on sanitation workers. It's hard to find the right verb for it sometimes. The work they're doing, it makes them marginal, vulnerable, and we are still trying to understand all the complexity behind their work, behind their position in the social ladder, and what that work does to them and what they do to that work. There's linkages between a lot of subjects that we still have to explore, but also all these discussions we've had about how to engage with them, how to provide them the platform, and how to make sure that our engagement with them does not take away their space and instead provides them a safe space to go where they want to go rather than where we want them to go. So yeah, it is a complex subject. We definitely haven't answered most of the question. Maybe we've just asked more questions that we had before. But I was really glad to be part of this organizing committee and this forum. And I'm looking forward to continuing the discussions with all of you.
Thank you, Alex, for those reflections. Would anybody else like to share? And it can be about anything to do with the forum, the themes, the issues, the organisation. This is an open space for us to discuss together. Are we all maxed out after a long week of Zoom and debating? Andres, you're putting your camera on feels like an act of openness. So would you like to share some reflections?
Yeah, no, I was just trying to be more present, but thanks, Maisie, for putting me on the spot. No, I think, I mean, I've really enjoyed the forum, and I think it has been really useful. There was lots of things to learn, lots of things also to reflect on. And I think it was also very valuable in terms of connecting people and providing that platform for different people to talk to each other and to listen to each other. So there were lots of people I knew or I had exchanged emails with, but I hadn't had the chance to really listen to what they were doing. So I think that was quite useful. Yeah, and I think it will also create a really valuable repository for anyone who wants to start working on sanitation workers, which is like, what should I read? There's nothing out there. So I think this is like quite a useful thing of, okay, I've read the 3 documents that I've been pointed to, and here I have like a really useful state of play, at least some time to come. So I think that was also good. Yeah, so those would be my reflections, and just reiterating the huge thanks to the organizing committee. I think it's been like an amazing work, and it has run really well and really smoothly. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you, Andres. That's really useful. And sorry for putting you on the spot like that. So at risk of doing the same to anybody else, I will just ask again openly, would anybody like to share reflections, or share any suggestions for what happens next and how we take this forward as a community.
Hi, Maisie. I think one thing that's come out is that we've got a lot of questions that have arisen from this week. There's things that we've learned about what we do. But there's a lot of questions to ask around what we don't know, and the fundamentals around the individual experience, individual needs, more detail intersectionality, and some of the examples that I've been thinking quite deeply about. I think going forward, this forum really needs to recognise these gaps in a concrete way and find a way of recording these. Yeah, we had a great workshop on setting the research agenda that was big about looking at gaps and opportunities in research. I think we just want to find a way of solidifying that and making it accessible so people can see what needs doing, finding ways to link up different people and work out ways to move forward. So that's what I'd like to see out of this forum, and certainly opportunities to connect participants up. Yeah, also to look at this and to look at that. Yeah, can we bring them together to try and get them to reflect them? Yeah, it's really a think about.
Thank you, Amita. I think you've raised a really important point as well, that often these forums or any kind of meeting or convening space raises more questions than answers. And we know that, and that's a real positive, but it does mean that the closure of the forum is really just the beginning of the work and the next steps. And I was thinking as well, as you were sharing, that kind of the gaps that perhaps exist on different levels. So we've got kind of the wider research or knowledge gaps, but one of the things that I'm taking from this as well is just reflecting on my own knowledge gaps and understanding gaps, and kind of the responsibility of working on this issue and being really clear and reflective about what your role is within this. And I think that linked in very much with some of those representation issues. And it was something, as somebody from the UK working for an international NGO, that I feel I need to really take time to reflect on how to contribute to this issue. So I think gaps on multiple levels to reflect on. Amita, come back in.
The other thing that I wanted to pick up on is how we actually get the conversation going between Sanitation workers and us to get them to really set the agenda. Yeah, there's a bit about researching with rather than one or four. Actually, one of the big questions is how do we practically create a platform, a network for researchers, academics, NGOs to connect with the communities themselves to work out the priorities. That's a really big learning curve, and I think is quite important. And when I say researchers, I mean researchers at all levels. You have people who are advanced in their career, that have got more experience, that have got some idea of what they want to look at to the research, but actually you've also got the other end of the spectrum, the researchers and people that start the career, finding ways to link up these every across the spectrum in an effective way with the workers themselves is going to be so important in being viewed forward. Because I think that, I guess it's a question of who is guiding who. Are we guiding the workers, or the workers now going to guide us? Or is it time for us to sit down and listen and take note of what they want us to do going forward. I think that's a really big practical question to think about for sure.
Thank you, Amita. I feel you've hit the nail on the head with what I think was possibly one of the earliest issues to be raised, but you know, something that has grown and grown in awareness this week of the concept of representation. Jonathan, you said you don't have reflections, but you have some questions, and I'm wondering if you'd like to take the mic and share those questions and why you would like to use that as a discussion point.
Yeah, they're a little bit selfish, so because a few things happened this week and I haven't had as much time to be able to participate as I wanted to, but it made me think about everybody else who, for other reasons, has not been able to participate this week, but who it is important to learn from what has been discussed and the content that has been produced from this week. And I wanted to ask the rest of you what you would want to share with them as a priority that you've learned this week. So I think, but Maisie, it's quite kind of a lazy question because it's very similar to what you asked at the beginning of the session. What are your reflections? But I was just reinterpreting it for the people who, yeah, as I said, because I think that's often the problem, isn't this? And it was actually apparent to me from the sessions that I did attend that there's so much to know. It's like a full-time job to engage with this topic, and for me, I guess personally, maybe it's similar for lots of people coming from an engineering and a technical background. I feel very, very out of my depth with it as well because of the multi-layers to it, right?
Brilliant, thank you, Jonathan. Sally, would you like to share some thoughts in relation to that?
Yeah, no, thanks, Jonathan, and I'm sure you'll rewatch the recordings, as you said in the chat, which is great, and we hope everyone else will too. I was just thinking about it, and I think one comment that a participant made in one session was that this is the first event they've seen that's on sanitation work specifically, and I think so. There's still not enough attention just on this issue. It's building up, but I think having that, crafting out visibility of the issue itself is one thing before sort of opening it up to, you know, other people to engage. I think it's important other people engage, but I think it needs a strong kind of push forward as an important agenda first of all, rather than maybe getting diffused into other aspects. And by that, I think we need to focus really on the worker-centered or people-centered approach to really put this agenda of sanitation work on the table before we say, well, who else wants to you know, talk about the sanitation technology, or who wants to. I think it's very much integrated, but this first and foremost probably needs to be an issue that's taken forward further. But yes, it doesn't really answer the question, but I think there's more that can be done to push this forward as an agenda in itself.
Brilliant, thank you, Sally. Anita, you'd like to share some more reflections? And just, I'm conscious that maybe some people have joined or are joining now. So just to let you know that we are having a very open, informal and honest discussion to reflect on some of the key learnings from this week, but also to share any suggestions about how we take this work forward. So please do feel free to come in. But Amita, I'll pass back to you to share first.
Yeah, I just wanted to build on what was just said, because I think one of the other things that we need to think about is how we bring different sides of the sanitation debate together. Yeah, you need to get people focusing on FSM in the technical side. Yeah, the technical side of people is relevant. Those experts need to engage with those who are more on the social side, and vice versa. How do we create this interdisciplinary debate in practical sense? And how do we go forward to do that is another big action, I think. Yeah. That's some of my key reflections from the week. Yeah, because if we look about rights, if we look about labour, that's a people-centred issue. This is a people-centred debate, and if we need to look at tools and occupational health, we also need to look at the social side of things as well, and look at the different disciplines that need to be involved to do that. I mean, it is a matter for engineers, which also a matter for sociologists, geographers. I could go on, but all the different disciplines that we have out there, it's a multidisciplinary topic with lots of different angles to think about.
Sorry, I couldn't come off mute there. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah, sorry everybody. There's always going to be technical problems even on the last day. Thank you, Amita. I think those reflections were really useful and really useful for starting off our process of thinking how to practically take this forward. Vishwanath, and sorry if I've mispronounced your name, but please come in and share your reflections.
Good. First of all, I thoroughly enjoyed Amita's sort of write-ups on the day-to-day proceedings and the way she captured all the workshop incidents. That's a fantastic summary. And so one reads it and then one is already on top of the game in terms of understanding what happened. So great work, Amita, on that particular point. And as I speak, I keep reading it and reflecting on it. So it's very nice that happens real time and that it's put in a blog or it's put in a space. The second was, Macy, your point, which was in the last conversation, which then skipped over a bit, the issue about the local versus the global, and how do we manage the tension between that. As somebody who's been working in this for, I don't know, 30, 35 years now, what one sees is the incredible diversity of issues and challenges. Even in a small town, there are different ways in which things pan out, and the environment in which it pans out is so radically different. Sometimes when we try to put one template to do the understanding, we're very much wrongly driven, right? Informality is oppressive in certain senses, but informality is also empowering in many cases, right? And the state, what is the role of the state? Is it a benefactor state or is it an exploitative state? That also makes a difference. And when one talks about state, it also at the local level, the representative of the state at the local level, what does it do with information and knowledge and transparency and conversations is critical to the conversation itself, right? So it's not enough to have those conversations alone, but to massage it or to manage it in such a fashion that it doesn't become more exploitative, right? So in the temporary sense. And these therefore means that those conversations have to be local, have to be curated by whoever, civil society, whatever academic institution, have to be done with a sensitivity to what consequences it can lead to. Just as one example, which is more technical, I'm also a civil engineer like Jonathan. I don't know, Jonathan, if you're a civil engineer or not, but I'm a civil engineer and I'm also delving into the social science spaces over the last some time. Is in a small town close by to Bengaluru, the manual scavengers have organized themselves, are now aware of the Manual Scavenging Act, and are actually participating in manual scavenging as an organized group with their rates now 10 times what it used to be in the past. And they do so willingly as a matter of choice, right? So what do you do with this kind of information and knowledge? Do you bring it out into the public domain? Do you engage with the manual scavengers? How do you deal with it is a question for researchers and for people who are engaged with the solution, right? So there are many, many complex voices, and those voices will not come to the global forum. It will not be transparent. It will not be discussed, and it will have to be understood and managed locally, is my reading of it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for, I saw a lot of nodding heads as you were sharing those reflections. I think it's very clearly some of the key things that have come out. Purva, please come in.
Yeah, I mean, that just taking on ahead from what Vishwanath was saying, like these 4 days have been incredible, like learning from different geographies of how things are and what things would be. But where do we draw that line of what needs to be then put out on a global platform and what need not be there? So, and then how are we then being that responsible people of, I mean, is it then responsibility of a person or then a group, or how do we then cultivate those channels of responsibilities of what then goes out on the platform and what doesn't? So that is something which was quite like we need to think about, and when we are moving ahead or going ahead with these conversations, something which we need to keep in our mind always, that some knowledges need not be there, need not be written into black and white, like and then bringing out something which is oppressive, which is and highlighting that, but then how do we manage that? So thank you, Vishwanath, for raising that.
Thank you, Purva. And I think actually what you've just said maybe segues quite nicely into a more kind of practical question for the group as to what suggestions do you have for what happens next? Is a forum like this useful to have on a more regular basis? Andres mentioned earlier that there's an online repository which will be launched, I think I'm right in saying perhaps towards the beginning of next year. Practically, as a short-term next step from this forum, we will still have access to the platform that we've been using to continue conversations. But I'm wondering beyond that, if anybody wants to share kind of practical suggestions for where we go next. And maybe the direct question then as to whether a forum like this would be useful again in a smaller or more regular way might prompt some reflections.
Since there's a silence, I thought I'd just sort of break it.
Thank you.
Try. Yeah, sorry about that. But I think the forum is an important place, and these conversations are important, as is the angst as to whether this is just talking heads or intellectual conversations. I'm sure it's leaving a lot of us who are working on the ground and who in connect with a lot of people much better armed than you would imagine, right? It's very important that these conversations be sort of imbibed gradually, and it shaped the kind of work or the eyes that you see the things that you do on the ground. So if you guys have the energy, the people who are putting in all the energy to get it all going, I would urge that you go ahead with it, make it an annual feature, and that would be, I hope, taking the juice out of you people.
I think David was unmuting himself, and then Nelly, I saw your hand go up as well.
Oh, and you were all managing to unmute before me. I don't know what's wrong with my Zoom. So David, would you like to come in on that and share some reflections? David, you're on mute, unfortunately.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you. No, I've been following the forum intermittently. I've gone back also to watch some of the proceedings that I missed. Of course, the platform is good. I support every comment that has been shared. We need to keep these conversations going, but more importantly, I think it's the connection with the actual workers on the ground. They are invisible, as we have heard and we've been reading and hearing from the ground, and we don't have to promote that invisibility. We somehow have to show our relevance on the ground to the workers and be seen. as much as we talk about them at the international level. We need to create that connection with them and get their voices and uplift their voices in this kind of forums that we are having. On the ILO point of view, we are committed to carry on raising the awareness and the voice of sanitation workers, especially the manual scavengers. We are exploring ways to have meaningful impact, especially working with our colleagues in the region who are also very keen on driving this work. As I mentioned when we had our session, we are currently brainstorming, building on to the workshop that we held, that we coordinated as ILO, and looking at the specific interventions that were raised here that we could incorporate in our work plans in the next 2 years. So I would encourage that we keep on the network, we keep on the working as we are working, but if there are strategies that can make our work even more relevant and speak to the workers themselves would be highly appreciated. It's not sufficient to be talking about these things as people, and then workers, the actual people that we are talking about, don't even know about us, have not even heard about us, are not aware of our existence. So that would be my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And also just to say, because I think maybe you didn't join at the start of this session, just to we extended a massive thank you to all of our speakers, and thank you for your powerful presentation in this morning's session, which I think was so useful in sharing kind of the examples and for us to learn about the how as well. So a huge thank you again for that. And Nelly, I'll come to you next, but also just to say that it would be brilliant if everybody has the opportunity to share in this session. So Hussein, Pallavi and Tom, it's great to have you all here. So please feel free afterwards to share your reflections too. But Nelly, I think you had your hand up previously.
Yeah, thank you. I think it was just to echo everybody's words and congratulations for the organization and the logistics. It was really amazing that you managed to pull this up so perfectly, so smoothly. So really like huge congratulations to all of you. I just wanted to answer the question, should you organize it again? Well, of course, if you have the energy, the time and the resources, it would be fantastic. And I think that having it maybe in next year, in a year, would also maybe enable to have more sanitation workers present. Because I think that for us, the next step is going to take the conversations back into the sanitation workers communities and associations with whom we've been working in the Overdue project. This is going to take several months, I think, because the sessions as such, like 1.5 hours or 2 hours recording, are probably not very accessible. So there's going to be work on listening again to the sessions, identifying key messages, key moments that we think can spur reactions and can lead to actions and shape really the actions that can be taken in these workers, communities and associations. And then there's going to be several months of putting this in practice and answering back. So maybe in a year, we can be ready to really have sanitation workers organized and participating, because we tried this year, but actually the time was really short. We needed translators into Wolof or into Swahili that we couldn't find. We couldn't rent the rooms and have the Zoom on. So we had to kind of drop it, but we really wanted to happen. So I think with 1 year delay, that would also make the forum maybe more inclusive and more accessible. if we really know in advance. But I know it's complicated. I know I imagine it was a lot of energy, a lot of investments, and I know how difficult it can be to sustain and to reproduce something like this. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Nelly. I think the suggestion for perhaps in 1 year's time is practical, as well as allowing for that time to ensure more representation, but also being conscious that allowing for the agenda and topics and format to be set through that kind of engagement period of representation. So actually what the forum may look like in a year's time, when we've had wider group of voices involved in organising it, may be completely reimagined. And I think we should be very open and encouraging of that, so that it is serving the needs of the sanitation workers themselves. I saw somebody who was Hussein, was it you who was about to? Hussein, please, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, all organizers, and especially Jen Bart. She found us and made us in touch with a very high-level global forum. And I think the interconnectivity through the social media like Twitter and other forums, it looks like a very huge forum, the global forum from various countries, experts, grassroots level workers, and researchers. So that's a very unique type of the forum. And I think it's a very helping for all of us. And it's a very learning sessions there. So I again congratulate you all the organizers and the team. Thank you.
Thank you, Hussein. And I think also it shows the different formats that we can continue to engage in as well, as opposed to it all being Zoom meetings. You mentioned social media. There's a lot of other ways that we can continue the conversation and include more in that. Jen. Jen, are you able to hear us? I think you might have frozen on my screen.
I think
is that me, or that's for everyone?
No, it's Jen. Yeah.
Okay.
Was about to speak, I think.
So maybe while we're waiting for Jen to get connectivity back up, Andres, I think you had your hand up before. Do you want to share some more reflections?
Yeah, I can go ahead. Oh, sorry, was it my turn?
Oh, absolutely, Pallavi. Please do come in.
I'm so sorry if I spoken or interrupted in between. Yeah, no. I sent ideas to Jen by mistake, like a direct message. So I was just saying that I'm part of a few other forums like this one, and they regularly have these coffee chats. It's a very informal kind of discussion, and these are like coffee talks in which people come together and then they post discussion topics, and then they have small breakout rooms in which you can go and they give you like a timer of 2 to 5 minutes, and then you talk and come back and share what the smaller groups reflected upon, and then share it out with the larger groups, and then they leave you with some food for thought. So I thought that might be a good idea if that can be organized on a maybe regional level, if people from South Asia have time zone differences and cannot join, so it can be done regionally for African colleagues in a different time zone, Latin American, like that way. And then of course, if there's a LinkedIn group where we can post discussion topics and people can weigh upon them. But I definitely concur with David totally, and all those like Hussein, whoever has talked about this. We must have 1 or 2 representatives from directly who are sanitation workers, or some kind of their representative who can come to these talks and talk directly to the August gathering that we have here to hear firsthand what the situation on the ground is. So those are my few thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pallavi, and sorry for not coming to you immediately. I didn't want to put anyone on the spot, but I think that's such a practical suggestion to go forward with, and it actually reminds me of a different group that I've been in that have kind of informal coffee chats to discuss water issues, and I think it's the informal connections and discussions that you have that can really help to take forward some of the different initiatives. So thank you for that very practical suggestion, which I think we can work together to implement. Tom, it's great to have you here. Would you like to come? It's so great to see you. Please come and share your reflections.
I'm very happy to be here. And let me start by echoing what Nelly said, the sentiments about real congratulations to all of you for organizing this forum. I've been working on Dalit issues for the last 15 years or more. And the feeling I have today is one of optimism and feeling very good about the progress being made, because all those years ago, this looked like such an insurmountable kind of issue and program and project, and the progress being made. And therefore, I was able to join yesterday's and today's sessions, and the advance being made, the mix of experiments being tried out. And I got the feeling that it is making a difference. Yes, there is still challenging targets to cover and big problems and things like that, but we are able to make a difference. And also the mix of people and participants in these forums. So finally, congratulations, genuine congratulations, Andres and others who were instrumental in starting this initiative for sanitation workers. Few years ago, we could not have dreamt of that. But today it is here, and these 4 days has been a testimony to what that initiative is coming together. And all of us together joining hands, we will be able to make a difference. So I'm very happy to have participated in it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those reflections, Tom. And can I just add to that and say that I think at the end of weeks like this, when we've discussed so many issues and understood kind of the journey that still needs to be completed, it's difficult sometimes to remember that actually progress is being made, and actually us and being together as a group and with all of the participants we've had this week is reflective of that. So thank you, Tom, for framing that at the end. I think that's a really important thing to remind ourselves of as well. Sally, do you like to share?
Before I do, I just want to check if Jen wants to reiterate your point, Jen, before we lost you, or not.
You're back. Please share.
It segued much more easily from the previous comments than Tom's lovely reflections. I was just going to also say that I think we have to keep in mind, if we want to continue these conversations, keeping in mind supporting institutional support for these conversations. WaterAid has been fantastic, but I'll just give a shout out to a lot of the people. Sally has been doing this in her free time. And all of the organizers have been. So I think it's important to acknowledge that, or most of the organizers, Maisie actually has a job. So I just want to clarify that, we're going to need to there's going to need to be support, and I think to keep these conversations moving forward.
Thanks, Jen. Yes, and very much so. We do need support. I just wanted to raise a couple of points that came out in the networking before this, which linked to our, bringing people on board kind of focus. And I hope they don't mind me saying them again, but I think it's important to flag it. One was from Emily, who mentioned about how they've been building up trust with and working closely with emptiers, I think in Zambia, and they have what she mentioned, sort of district water and sanitation groups, and then they build up from that to speak to global platforms. So I think building that trust and working with sanitation workers at the local level and then attending platforms on their terms, I think that's one thing that was really interesting. And Raman, who has connection issues, so couldn't join us now, also mentioned about how we could bring certain sanitation workers and representatives into the organising committee itself to also again set the agenda according to priorities. But relating to what Jen said, there has to be capacity, there has to be money, time. People are extremely busy. You know, we managed to do this. We've all got working lives. We've managed to do this additionally to other workload. And I think asking that of people who are really much in the throngs of intense work can be challenging. So how do we navigate that and support people to give them the space and time to to organise this kind of type of forum? So I think there's some reflections there too on capacity and funding. Yeah.
Thank you, Sally. I think that's a very kind of practical thing to raise as well, as much as I think everybody is feeling energized and motivated to take this forward. We need that to be carved out and supported as well. So I'm conscious that we're coming to the end of this session, and I did just want to share a very practical side regarding what happens next, but I just wanted to give the opportunity for anybody to share any final thoughts or reflections before we come to a close. Andres?
No, just a quick reflection on the what to do next year and things. I think, I mean, one of the reasons why I thought this was important to have something like this was the lack of space for the topic of sanitation work to be discussed in other fora, like the typical conferences in the water sector. So to me, it was like, if we had that space, maybe we would need to have a separate event. But then I think the way you meaning the organizing committee have crafted this goes much beyond that initial driver, because it's not like a space to discuss these issues, but also to bring together different sectors and to bring the voices of workers' representatives much more to the center of the conversation. So I was just wanted to flag that. And I think looking to the future, we can also think of a shorter forum, or having regional days and then one global day rather than having it all global. Because I also think in terms of the participation of the workers, I also ask myself, like, why would workers or workers representative spend their time here or spend their time telling us what the agenda should be? Is it for them, or is it for us to be able to feel that this is representative? So what is really the best use of their time? And I think maybe making it a bit more national or regional level may also increase the relevance and the what's in it for them to engage, allowing those connections, being able to do things in local languages rather than in English. So I think those are some of elements that we could consider. And maybe quickly also to flag that there's like we could also consider having some sort of communication channel, like a Google group, a community of practice, something. I think you have a big list of people that are interested. There's something that could be done with that. And thanks Tom for your comments also. And I think the other thing that I take from this forum is like a renewed energy. So seeing all the time that you guys have put into it, all the contributions and all the seeing again all the work that people like Vaswada, Mary and others are doing really energizes me to keep our small part of the puzzle going and trying to enable or support that as much as we can and as best as we can. So thanks everyone.
Okay, so Maisie, did you want to say anything else?
No, just to say thank you to everybody for sharing that during this session. And personally, I'm super pleased to be connected with you all and look forward to working together in the future. But Sally, over to you to close the forum.
Thanks, Maisie, and again, just a huge thank you to all of you for joining for this last reflection as well. And as I said in the announcement yesterday, this isn't the end of this. We want people to rewatch the video, so please do share this and talk about it among your colleagues. Thank you as well for bringing in your colleagues into this conversation. We think that the conversations have been really rich and detailed and will help going forward. So we really appreciate that. And just to echo all the thanks, and especially to the committee who've been there over the last year, really putting this together. So Amita, Alex, Parva, Maisie, Rachel, Mariam, Jen, we've really gone for it and tried to make this a diverse space, and we really appreciate everyone's help to do that. So would anyone else in the committee like to say anything, or should we hit the close button? Okay, so I think we'll end it there. Thank you again, and we'll be in touch with further. Yes, David, you were going to unmute yourself.
No, I just unmuted myself so I can just say bye.
Well, maybe we can all do that. If everyone's happy to unmute themselves and say bye, that might be a nice way to end this. So please unmute yourselves, and we will see you again.
Bye.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Ciao.